Welcome back to Telltale Books. I'm Greg,
And I'm Emily.
and we're going to continue our A.E. Van Vogt series with, I forget which number this is. Hold
I don't
on.
remember either. No, let us consult the scrolls. The scrolls.
The scrolls that tell. This is my digital memory.
We all are like that these days. All the way down to the V's.
Yeah, almost at the bottom. I gotta change how I have that on the website.
Mhm.
Um, okay, Vault of the Beast is number 5, his fifth published work, but it actually was his first written work. It
Ah,
just didn't get published until later.
got it.
But it was his first written published or his first written science fiction story, but it got
Mhm.
published after 4 other stories. Don't know why. Didn't
Interesting.
didn't see anything telling me why. But it was published in the August 1940 issue of Astounding Stories, which I have a copy of.
I love that cover too. It's really.
I do too. I've seen this reproduced in books on the
Mhm.
history of science fiction, and so I always wanted this.
Do a quick little
I'll
sample here.
probably shoot it and put it up because it's too
Mhm.
small. But you want to take a look at that. That's the actual issue of Astounding with Vault of the Beast in it. The cover story and artwork is for The Stars Look Down by Lester Del Rey. Beautiful cover by Hubert Rogers.
Some really great illustrations in there too.
Yeah, and
I'm a good sucker for a good illustration.
I think Vault of the Beast has some nice artwork too.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I saw it in the copy that I had. It was pretty neat.
yeah.
All right, I'll quit
So
looking. So I like to look with my hands.
So that's the original source. It's a novelette length work. It is also in the Great Science Fiction Stories, Volume 2 for 1940 by Isaac Asimov and Martin H. Greenberg,
Very
which is where
cool.
I've read it.
Also love that cover. The little alien guys. Very nice.
And anybody looking for a currently in print book with this story, um, Nesfa Press publishes a lot of really cool volumes like this one. This is Transfinite, which is the essential A.E. Van Vogt, and it has Vault of the Beast and Black Destroyer and quite a few other of his best science fiction stories in it.
Very cool.
It's an excellent book and
Illustration.
priced reasonably and really well produced book with a beautiful Bob Eggleton cover
Very nice.
illustration. I wish
That paper's
Nesfa
so pretty.
Press would do more books because I really love what they've done with the books that they have done.
Yeah, that thing's solid. Very
But it
nice.
is currently available off their website. So
Get it. Wow, you okay?
yeah. So on to the story. Do you want to take that?
Sure.
Okay.
Up until a point, because some of the like rationale went over my head a little bit.
I probably won't get too deep into that either,
Okay.
because a lot of people wouldn't.
I kind of
Um,
like buzzed through that part. I tried to have some comprehension, but
and
anyway.
I don't think it's important to really understand
Hmm.
the mathematical argument to know that that is
Yeah.
what was used at that point in the story.
Yeah. So it starts off surrounding the travels of an organic robot that can shift into different elements and also people. And it actually is quite a struggle for this bot because you're kind of like following its thought patterns and stuff. And his mission, or its mission, is to find the mathematician that can basically solve the problem of the Vault of the Beast.
Hmm.
And
Which is on Mars.
which is on Mars. And so he comes to Earth, or it comes to Earth. I need to stop gendering things that have no gender. But it comes to Earth, and it's just kind of fumbling around, trying to find the person it's looking for. It's inhabiting bodies as it goes, trying to like get closer and closer and closer, and it reads thoughts as it starts to like form into things. So it'll do like a partial formation to read the thoughts of people and kind of like find people who know a guy who knows a guy. So it's kind of the traveling between people that it's impersonating and or killing to impersonate to find this mathematician. And eventually it does find the mathematician. by coming to that mathematician as himself, um, and speaking to him to be like, "Hey, we have this math problem you got to solve." And the guy's like, "Hell no, you figure it out on your own." And they're like, "Oh, hell no!" And so they basically kidnap him, um, and take him to Mars.
And it's interesting that this robot has a weakness.
Hmm.
If it gets too close to metal, it wants to shift into the
Yes,
metal.
or any other, yeah, especially metal, but any object really, like it really has to focus to stay
Yeah.
into in the shape that it shows.
But if it gets too close to metal, it'll just be
Start.
drawn into shifting to look like the metal and
Mhm.
can't really control that.
Yes, and
Um,
especially ultimate metal, which is a
yeah,
material that was found on Mars, I believe,
I
in the
think so.
story. And Earth was trying to mine it and stuff, so it's in everything everywhere.
Hmm.
So this little robot thing, which is also very tormented by its creators, um, is just trying its best to remain a shape in order to be able to find this mathematician to solve the problem.
Right.
So it kind of.
And in the end, the Earthman does know the solution to letting the beast out, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
because they assume that this creature inside that the Martians trapped in here is going to be evil.
Mm. Yes.
But since the creature's never let out, we never meet it, we never really know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I find that an interesting ending to the story, that is, you just assume that this creature is some hideous, horrible,
Mm-hmm.
powerful, evil monster.
Yeah, that could end the or rule the universe.
But Van Vogt never takes you there.
Yeah.
So you don't know. It could be completely
Yeah.
harmless and
Well,
benevolent.
and actually what happens is they actually open the vault, but the being dies because there was a factor of some kind they didn't account
Yeah.
for, which was time.
Yeah. It has to do with negative
Yeah.
numbers.
So like in like the tube it would have stayed alive, but the second they opened it, there was like a time shift, and
Hmm.
so it became dust.
Hmm.
And the robot is actually the one responsible for knowing that that was a flaw and never telling its superiors that that was the issue.
That's right. I forgot all that part.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. The solution to letting the beast out and the solution to defeating the beast is total mathematics having to do with prime numbers.
Hmm.
And if you're mathematically inclined, you can follow what Van Vogt is talking about. But if you're not, it really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. You
You can
can kind of
enjoy
skim
the
that part
story
for the
without it.
reader and still enjoy.
But that is one of the cool things that were being done in 1939, 1940 under Campbell's direction, is that introduction of real math and real science into the stories.
Hmm.
Because through the 1930s, even in Astounding and before Campbell took over, and even in Campbell's own early science fiction stories, most of the science is crap.
Yeah.
Like I just finished reading The Green Girl by Jack Williamson, and that has the science in that is so far away from true science that you have to treat it like a fantasy
Hmm.
story. It's science fiction, but none of the science is real science. It's totally made up, totally
Hmm.
bogus,
Yeah.
and none of it could actually work. So that's what Campbell wanted to do, is he wanted, if you're going to make science fiction, there should be at least a certain amount of accurate science.
Yeah.
And then that can be a springboard for more imaginative
Hmm.
future science that hasn't been discovered yet. But he still wanted that foundation of some kind of accuracy to the stories. And that really changed science fiction a great
Hmm.
deal, made it a lot more intelligent, made it something you can actually learn some science from.
Hmm. Yeah.
And just the feel of the stories in the 1940s is different from what was written in the 1930s.
Hmm.
Very different.
Yes. I also really love that concept of this organic based robot
Hmm.
that's programmed, or rather tormented, and has thoughts and feelings of its own, but still like is forced to take on all of this personality and the thoughts of others as it transforms and does this stuff.
Yeah.
And being able to have feelings as it adapts, because it finds, like, spoiler alert, in the end, the reason it betrayed its creators is because it liked being human.
Hmm.
And I find that social aspect really interesting as well. Because you're not just looking at it from the perspective of that kind of like the mathematic sciences.
Yeah.
It's also a social science.
Hmm.
And you kind of get that interesting perspective from a being that's entire purpose is to take on other beings' personalities
Hmm.
and take on other beings' characteristics. And in doing so, potentially dying because if you start taking on an inanimate object and you can't maintain what you are, you become dead like the object.
Hmm.
And I just thought that was a really cool and interesting concept to bring into this, especially for something that's in such an early time, like the golden age of science fiction. Like,
Yeah.
I understand it's the golden age, but somebody in the 1930s and 40s thinking about something like this
Hmm.
is super cool and also
Hmm.
super insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, what an original idea. I really enjoyed that.
Hmm. And while Van Vogt wrote a lot of stories, you know, in this period of his career, I'm not as familiar with later work by him,
Mhm.
but we'll get there. Um, in this period of his career, he wrote a lot of stories where he had these individual alien beings encountering human beings,
Mhm.
and many of them were shapeshifters. This is the first time he had a shapeshifter robot,
Mhm.
but he did have this interest in these shape shifting antagonists in his
Mhm.
stories, and he had which he used in this story. He had this idea of shifting between the viewpoint of the humans and the viewpoint of the antagonist,
Mhm.
which he repeated himself, but each time he found ways to make it more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I appreciated that crafting as well because that can't be easy to do because
Hmm.
it's an internal dialogue that's in a constant state of switching, which is why I think this particular writing was so masterful.
Yeah.
I'm on it for Top Tail if
Oh
you're on
yeah,
it for Top
definitely.
Tail. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Because
this
that was really a cool work.
this is a classic story. It's been anthologized a lot over the
Mhm.
years, and it was way back before any awards were being given, but it is an acknowledged masterpiece of science fiction. So definite top tail.
Yeah, and I breezed through it. Like, it did
Hmm.
not feel like a novelette to me.
No.
It just went so fast.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that's what I appreciated about it too. Like, I sat and probably in an hour, I read it a time and a half because I tried to go back and read the mathematics part to see if I understood it. I'm like, I can't. I'm not even remembering from like high school. I have no reference point to bring forward to try to make sense of this. So like in an hour and a half,
Yeah.
or like in an hour, I could read it a time and a half, I should say. So
Yeah.
it was a really good, quick read with really well developed
Another
concept.
interesting thing to point out about this story is this idea of this robot that can blend in and look
Hmm.
like other humans. We've already seen that in Philip K. Dick's work.
Yeah.
So it's pretty clear that Dick was paying attention to what Van Vogt had written
Hmm.
when he started writing his science fiction,
Yes.
Van Vogt was a definite influence on Philip K. Dick.
And I think it's cool too, like this concept of fear of doppelgang, like of this doppelganger fear,
Hmm.
innate in humans, where you have like this concept of what if you don't get the uncanny valley phenomenon when you see a robot or something that isn't human? What if you
Hmm.
don't, as a human, even recognize that it's not what
Hmm.
it is? And I think that's a really interesting fear to play off of.
Well, and in Philip Dick's day, there was a great fear running through the United States of how do you identify communists,
Yes.
thinking that there were all these communist infiltrators and you couldn't identify them from anyone else. So when Philip Dick was writing about this kind of stuff, he was responding to what was going on in society. But in
Hmm.
1940, I don't think that was going on.
No, it's merely like this concept of fear of otherness and not being
Hmm.
able to recognize otherness,
Yeah.
which is like, to sit and think about the innate human fears and how they're in literature is so interesting to me. And I often try to think in context as well, like what is going on that might cause this to happen. But if it's not super clear, just a great original story,
Hmm.
understanding that, like, I don't know, maybe you pull it from the ancient lore of skinwalkers or something
I don't
where
know.
they just take on a shape and you can't recognize that it's not what that's supposed to be, or
Hmm.
sometimes you sort of can if you catch it in mid transition. But I just think that's a really cool fear to play off in
Yeah.
humanity.
But in 1940, things were a little more black and white. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the enemies were Chinese that you could really identify.
Mm-hmm.
They looked Asian.
Yeah.
Japanese looked Asian.
Yeah.
Germans looked German.
Yeah.
You know, it was very easy to identify your enemy.
Yeah.
Where,
Integration of cultures was not as big of a thing as it
yeah.
is now.
So that kind of fear of the enemy looking like the guy that lives next door,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't really come into the rest of society until the 1950s with the communist scares. So Van Vogt was kind of ahead of his time, imagining this kind
Yeah.
of issue and this kind of fear of something coming into our society that looked like us.
Yeah.
Um, Later science fiction authors would really run with that
Mm-hmm.
and make some great stories like Invasion of the Body Snatchers
Mm-hmm.
or Blade Runner.
The thing.
The Thing.
Yeah, that was a
Yes.
great, yeah, really great piece of work. So that's, I just really clung to that with this story
Hmm.
and really focused on that because one, the math was way over my head. But that whole concept was just so fascinating to me about what would we do if we couldn't tell?
Yeah.
And that is a really interesting, like, there's a lot that could have been done with the story, but I loved that it did what it did. So, but also great inspiration for any science fiction writers out there as well. Like, what a fun concept to play off of. So,
Hmm.
go, be wild and free. Enjoy.
Yeah. The only nitpicky part for me
Hmm.
is the ultimate solution hinged on the postulate that this alien civilization would be able to build a spacefaring civilization without understanding negative numbers.
Hmm.
And that's how the Earthmen trips up their math.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of think any civilization has to come across this concept of negative numbers
Okay.
in order to build the sophisticated math that we have for our technology.
Yeah, and it kind of seemed a little of a stretch to have something so simple as time being a factor.
Hmm.
You would think they would have figured that out. You know,
Yeah.
not just the robot, not just the human man. You'd
Hmm.
think this really sophisticated civilization. Yeah, I
And
get that.
actually, I think it's the dead Martians that didn't understand negative numbers, but they still had advanced science without
Mhm.
knowing anything about negative numbers.
Yeah,
That just didn't work for me. But the rest, that's a really minor point
yeah.
that only those of us who nitpick that kind of deep science and math are going to care about. Everybody else is going to read it and go, "Wow, this is a
That's
cool
a really cool
story,"
story.
and completely readable today. I think I
Mhm.
didn't feel there was anything about it that felt
No,
dated.
I felt like we were reading a modern work. It
Hmm.
did not feel old-fashioned. It didn't feel, it felt, yeah, it just felt modern and contemporary. I didn't
Hmm.
feel like I was reading something from 30s, 40s,
Yeah.
you know, back then,
Hmm.
sort of thing. So it was really well done.
Yeah. So definitely a top tale.
Cocktail.
And have you read Vault of the Beast? We want to hear your thoughts about it, your comments. Put them in the comments section of the video for everybody to enjoy and learn from. And anything about Van Vogt that you have to share, put that there as well.
Mhm.
And otherwise, like the video and subscribe to the video because that supports, subscribe to the channel because that
Mhm.
all supports us. And come on back and watch a lot more Van Vogt. Let me see what the next one is.
Scrolls. I feel like the little
Now,
aliens from Toy Story. The claw.
this one's, it's going to be a while for us to get to us because it's a novel.
Mm-hmm.
His first novel is called Slan, and it is considered a masterpiece of science fiction. So we got to read that
I'm
together.
excited.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So Slan is coming up next. And we'll have that and many other, before that, many other discussions of books and science fiction and literature and writers and society and all kinds of stuff.
Oh,
So come
good.
on back and we'll keep watching our videos.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.